Okay, here we go. All right, so welcome everyone to Pisces, two merge as one. And this is the first of the water signs that we're going to be talking about. We've done the earth and the fire and the air, and now we're going to be into water, and water is the soul and emotional realm. So this will be a really a lot of depth to water. Um, and looking forward to sharing this information. But before I get started, I've got to do my announcements here. And my first announcement is that I want to remind you guys to take advantage of the 50-minute session that I have offered. That's for $77, and the link is in the chat. I'll re-put it in the chat in a little bit because I will repost the questions for the person who just came in, because I know they can't see the questions. So I'll do that in just a moment. So there is the link there. The second thing is I want to remind you that I have the Shasta retreat, the Shasta Sacred Journey. I have the dates from September 19th through the 23rd. I have 4 spots left in that one. The first one is full. I'm super excited. I'm gathering all my stuff for that already. I'm just looking forward to that. That'll be a great trip. And so if you're interested, want to know more details, just reach out to me personally and I can have a conversation with you. My third announcement is I want to let those of you who are in the Sacramento County area over here, I'm going to be doing an ancestral drumming medicine walk on the 28th of February at the Radiant Light Healing Center. And it's the Scholar Wave system, Scholar Wave technology. It's $75. It's a 2-hour class. It'd probably be about an hour of conversation, or when I take you through the drumming and the medicine walk, and then the rest of the time is just being in the energy of this technology, which is super powerful. And it's spelled SCALAR. If any of you are interested or want to know more about that, like just Google that, and it's some pretty amazing technology. And the last announcement is that our next master class will be on March 23rd, same time, same link, and that'll be on Aries. So we'll be back in the fire world. So each one of these master classes goes from fire, earth, air, and water, just as they go around the astrological wheel. Okay. So those are the announcements. And let's get started here. Let me just make sure nobody else is waiting to come in. I don't see anybody else. Okay. So last month we talked about Aquarius, which was the life giver. And just a quick small recap, like this was about Aquarius is about the group consciousness. Okay. It's about us in our individuation, and how that individuation is part of how we are actually being asked to rebel, to become the self, to pull away from the mother archetype, to pull away from the group consciousness, pull away from the tribal mindset, in order for us to become individualized. And then from that point is when we come back to the group. It's like the hero's journey, where we leave. The hero leaves the town to go find himself, and then he comes back and he brings the treasures and the gifts to the village that he has left, or that she has left. So that was last month. If you guys missed it, you want to catch it, the recording is available on my YouTube channel. But this month we're going to talk about Pisces. And I have to say, I love talking about the water signs because I myself am a water sign, and I have a ton of water in my chart. So I love the water signs, and they come a little bit easier, and I'm at the effect of them in different ways of the other signs. But, that's my archetypal journey. That's my medicine walk in this lifetime. So the title, To Merge as One. Okay, to merge as one. And the image that I sent out was the two fish swimming. So Pisces is symbolized by the fish. There's 2 fish. And these fish are called the fish of awareness. And it is about taking that deep dive into the ocean of consciousness. So Pisces, if it could speak, it would say, let go, transcend, forgive. It's the healer archetype. And as I said, it's a water sign. So we're talking about the soul and emotional realm, the spirit realm. The heart of Pisces, the heart of the Pisces journey is that it seeks to express the soul itself. So the walk of Pisces through your life, because whether you're a Pisces or not, actually, let me ask the question here. How many people here are Pisces? Do we have any Pisces? Yep, I see Kim. I know Martha is. There's a few of you that are Pisces, and some of you may have a Pisces moon or other planet in your chart. And so for you, this is going to feel a little bit more, you may feel even more resonance with this, that you see how your life is really related to this. But everyone else, your life is still related because we all walk this journey in our life. And that's the thing about these classes that I'm doing, these master classes. The purpose of them is to help for that you can, so that you can see through the astrological language that this is also your medicine walk. Okay, this is your archetypal journey. Every single one of these signs is something that you are going to be faced with, that you will choose to walk in this way or not. And so when we go through each of these signs, like, just drop in and just recall in your life, like, is this something that I have observed about me? Is this something that resonates with me? Is this a theme that I see myself? And I have had these experiences, because I'm going to say that for all of you on the call, because otherwise you wouldn't be on this type of a call, that you're going to be able to relate to this. So as I said that before, like, Pisces journey is seeks to express the soul self. Okay. And so these two fish, what they represent is the ego and the soul. And the name of this masterclass with Pisces, to merge as one. So right there, we already see a little bit of a duality, because we have the ego, that's one of the fish. We have the other fish that is the soul self. And how do we merge these two and make these two become one? So I'm just going to put that little rhetorical question out there for you as we continue on. And I think that I feel that you're going to be able to understand what that means as we go further. So first, I'm going to start with the characteristics of Pisces. Okay, the fish in the ocean. So Pisces is the great ocean of life. It's the great ocean of consciousness. It's representative of, like, the God consciousness. Okay. So it is the depth of the ocean, which is the depth of you. So the path, the walk of Pisces is the inward and downward journey. Inward and downward, to go to the depth of ourself, go to the depth of your own ocean, to the mystery of yourself. It's cosmic consciousness. Pisces senses the subtle. It's a very intuitive, empathic energy. So it's that intuitive, empathic energy within you that is able to pick up on things that you can't see, touch, taste, smell. It's all about the feeling realm. This is also where creativity is spawned. Creativity is spawned in this, in the depth of the self, and it's also spawned in the ocean of life, in the collective consciousness. As depth psychologist Carl Jung, he's the one who phrased collective unconscious. And so your ability to tap into that, to open up that seventh chakra here over your head, and connect with the divine, and connect with that, with the cosmic soup. This is very Piscean. This is part of the Piscean journey. So not only is it creativity, but it's the dreamer, it's imagination. So Pisces has a very mystical quality. It is also the mystic archetype. And so if you can imagine for yourself that this world of energy, this world of the abstract, of the mystical, this is all part of the Piscean world. And the world that all of you, I'm going to say, have entered into and are walking on some level. And I think that, each of us are walking it at a different, whether it's a pace, um, again, I'm going to use the word again, at a different level, a different frequency, a different vibration, but you're all walking it. Here's the other thing about Pisces, because it's such a feeling, such a feeler to the depth, it's also about sacrificial love. So this is where the martyr archetype comes in. We have the healer archetype. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but we have the healer archetype that's part of this Piscean walk. We have the mystic archetype. We have the martyr archetype. I'm going to bring in a few more in a moment. So it's sacrificial love. It's about selfless service to humanity. That is the another aspect of the medicine walk of the Piscean archetype. So Pisces has the capacity to bring love into places and be the transformer. And where it likes to attend to is society. So, for example, Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa is such a great example of a Piscean energy. Now, she wasn't Pisces. I looked at her chart, but we all have Pisces in it, like I said. But she's the perfect example of this sacrificial love, of this self-sacrifice. Jesus, the story of Jesus Christ. That's another archetypal story of Pisces. And the other piece of this is that, like in astrology, Pisces is representative, as I said, the healer archetype, and it's also about Christ consciousness. It's about love. Some of the other archetypes that come in is the rescuer, because if we're going to have the healer, we're going to have the rescuer and the codependent. It's the hermit. And part of what makes it the hermit is that the sensitivity of this archetype is that it's part of how one refuels. And there's also, there's a shadow of the hermit, but in order to refuel with all that water energy, one must hermit themselves to refuel. And I think that for some who have more water in their astrological chart, you're going to tend to need more of that refueling than those who are more earth or fire or air oriented, because you fuel a little differently. Okay. It's also the shapeshifter. And the reason why the shapeshifter comes in is because if you think about water, water is, could be very mutable, and it can move from one form to the next. You can dump your glass of water out, or you can freeze glass, or you can freeze water and it becomes hard. So it's also a shapeshifter. Water takes whatever form it is contained in, whatever glass, whatever, the shape of a bowl or a cup. And that's why it's part of the shape-shifting energy. Okay. I'm going to pause in just a moment to just see if anybody has anything they want to share or that's coming up for them. I want to go into some of the shadow aspect of this archetype. And because it is the deep dive into the self, and not everybody is up for that in this lifetime. Not everybody's up for it in the timing of their life and in particular, years of their life path. The shadow of it is escapism, addictions, Pollyanna. Okay. Like, I'm just going to escape. I'm going to avoid. I'm feeling too much. What's happening around me, the external world, that the voices are so loud. The feelings are so big. I need to shut that off. I need to escape. I need to distract. And it causes psychic tension. And that's what that's one of the pieces that adds to this escapism. And then we go into addictions, and some of the things that I have, heard and learned over the years about addiction. It's like, oh, it's keeping addictions keep us separate from ourself, keep us separate from God, which is self. And so we go into some form of addiction. It's the only way I can avoid, because the pain of the feeling realm of what I'm feeling, or maybe my wounds are so big, I need to, I can't be in the body. The body does not feel like a safe place to be. And then we have the Pollyanna. Oh, everything's wonderful. I see life through rose-colored glasses. And that's another avoidance. And it's avoidance also of our own victim, because we feel victimized by our sensitivities. But what we want to remember here, because we're talking about water, we're also talking about boundaries. And that's what gets us hooked into this, is when we do not have clear boundaries. And initially, I'm going to say we don't. I don't know that any of us did, starting out on our walk here on this planet. That's what we discover. It's all part of our self-care. It's all part of the construct of the self. Okay, here's something I think is really important. It just popped in that I want to share is, this is something that I will share when I'm talking to clients sometimes, is that, we come into this world and we're shaped and molded by our conditioning, by parents, by whoever took care of us, by school, by society, and all that sort of thing. And so that is where the construct of the ego begins to happen, the ego self. And ego is not a negative word, right? It's not. It's how it's actualized in the world, and how we work with it, whether it becomes a shadow or a light aspect. But the ego self is, it's like it needs to be formed. Like, we have to build the construct of the self. And you may have encountered people that don't have a good constitution when it comes to their self and their self identity on some level. And those are people that tend to get their boundaries crossed a lot, that feel victimized a lot, and that suffer, a lot of pain, or have been victimized to the point of where they have not been able to form a healthy sense of self. And this is a very, like, crucial aspect of ourself. And so this forming of the self, if it is not formed, then this is where this shadow piece of the Piscean archetype comes in. And that's where it's like, I can't deal with life. I'm not able to form and actually even construct some form of a first chakra. This totally affects our first chakra experience in early childhood. Okay. So as we continue to move through life, and let's say we do have a good sense of self, a fair sense of self, where we have constructed this healthy, somewhat of a healthy construct. As we proceed through the journey of life, and we come to our own awakening at whatever point that may be for us, the journey of Pisces at that point is then to lose the self in service, to where then we become an agent of selfless service. But is the beauty. It's the beauty of the evolutionary process. But if a healthy self has not been formed, then that is where we become at the effect, and we can be in service. And I'm sure people, people, and I know people who are in service, but yet they're at the effect of the service that they're in. And they sometimes will struggle to realize that they are at the effect of it, because they're in service and they're helping others, but they're doing it at a cost to themselves. And that's when we know that there is some form of the construct of self that has not been fully developed, because we can't just say, I'm just going to, give myself up. Although there's some people who are, I believe, incarnated into this life to do that, such as we look at the story of Jesus, we look at the story of Mother Teresa. So it's actually a very, navigating this, because it's one of the qualities of water energy with Pisces is mutability. So there's this kind of, that's where, like I said earlier, that shapeshifter energy comes in. And so there's like these fine lines that we need to walk. And it's all part of the water world. Water is not, it's not defined like the other elements on the earth. It's very different. So a lot of intuition is involved in walking this path that we're on, this part of the path that I'm talking about. Okay. So I'm going to pause for a moment and I'm going to see, oops, I have somebody coming in here. I didn't even see that. I'm going to pause for a moment and I'm going to see if any of you have anything that you want to share or just a comment right now before I continue, because I have a few more things to say here that are going to be really some good stuff. So does anybody have anything they want to, yeah, Kim, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think I heard you say something I've never heard before, and I just want to make sure I got it. What I wrote down is the ego self needs to be formed with and self-identity, but I think I heard you say that I've always thought of the ego as being the lower
Vibration.
level. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think I heard you say not that. I think you were saying it in a different way. Could you help me with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So this is a really okay, give me a second to get this because this is a really important piece here, and I want to be able to communicate this properly. Okay, so here's um, Pisces, the two fish swimming. In some of the glyphs of Pisces, you see two fish swimming in opposite directions. Okay, and the whole idea is to bring those two fish into communion. So what we want to do is we want to bring our soul and our ego into communion. Now, there is the lower nature of the ego. This what I'm about to share with you is based on theosophy, esoteric astrology, different than traditional astrology, but it's more of the soul emotional experience of life that I'm going to be talking about here. So, bringing those two into union, into communion. We have the lower nature of the ego, and we have the higher nature of the ego. The ego is the vehicle in which the personality that each one of your personalities expresses itself through. It expresses itself through the nature of the ego. Now, the soul, the soul is not a personality. The soul is a whole other aspect of ourself. I don't even know if I can quite define it completely because, I only know what I've studied and my own experience. But the soul must have a vehicle in order to express itself through. And that is the higher nature of the ego. And if we are working in victim in our life, if we are in a place in our life where we are struggling and feeling wounded in victimization or in like arrogance in a shadow way, we are working from the lower nature of the ego. When we are working through the higher nature of our ego, that is this vehicle in which the soul is expressing out itself through, which is through our personality, because we are human beings. Does that make sense?
It's like I was thinking of that, like the merging of the ego and the soul, and the I've seen the fish go round and around, like, and it's the body and the soul, like the human. How I was thinking of it is like you're saying the humanness needs to move up to the soul level,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah, that's great.
that kind of that
Yeah,
makes sense. Now that makes a
yes,
lot of sense.
yes. So we know when we're getting reactive and we're taking things personally, that's our lower nature of our ego.
Hmm.
Right? Because we don't, well, the ego is part of how we function. I mean, it's part of the whole human experience for us.
It's interesting because often I've heard ego as negative, and you're saying it's just part of our landscape. It's just,
Exactly.
and we need to honor it and move with it to the higher nature.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Oh, thank you so
Great
much.
question. I'm so
Very
glad you
good.
asked that.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Kim. Um, Pat, you were unmuted. I'm gonna go to you first. If you want to say something, I'll go to Martha.
Yeah, it's just one quick thing. It's interesting. I have so many people in my life that are Pisces, both my children, my granddaughter, two of my and my niece-in-law, two of my very special friends, and my now ex-boyfriend. And it's like, holy mackerel, I'm surrounded by Pisces, and I'm trying to pick. Oh yeah, that's that one, and that's that one. That's your talk.
Yeah, isn't that I how we have certain well, personality archetypes, I'm going to say archetypes because that's what
Yeah.
these are, that we gravitate toward and they gravitate toward us.
Oh,
Yes.
don't kidding.
Thank you, Pat. Martha.
Um, I think of soul is not the soul, the Christ self, the divine expression. And when you have communion with the ego, then you are serving in your highest and greatest self and expression. That's how I think of the soul. Is that is that is divinity and Christ. That's I don't know any other word to put it for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I think that we're just using some different language, but I think we're speaking the same concept, idea. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else before I continue? Okay, let's carry on. And I'm sorry, Carol and Alicia, I didn't see you come in, so I apologize for making you wait. Okay, so let's carry on here. And okay, this is going to be a really fun piece and a really powerful, important piece for all of us. Now, here in Pisces, because we are talking about the water element and the feminine also, because Pisces is feminine. We're also talking about then the mother, the inner mother. We're going to talk about both the inner mother and the inner father, but the inner mother, the loving, natural, intuitive intelligence. This is part of the Pisces journey. It's the loving, natural, intuitive intelligence that causes and that creates the desire to serve. If we think about the mother archetype, to serve, to give, to love, and we bring the water element into it, it becomes the intuitive intelligence. Okay. Um, but here's the thing about the mother archetype in this aspect. And so when we have, and this is what I want to invite you to check in for yourself. It's like when we have an over, and no, that's not the correct word. If when we have an imbalance of the mother energy within us, and in comparison to the father energy, which I will explain in a moment, this is what you're going to notice. Now, the mother energy, right? The intuitive, natural, that intelligence. The father energy is the will energy. Okay. The inner father is the will. And where do we find the inner father? We find the inner father hidden deep inside of us. And he is deep inside of us. And so if you notice in some people, maybe that you may, be in contact with relationships, or maybe you yourself, like take a quick inventory right now. Like, where do you feel that there is an imbalance of this mother and father energy within you? See, because here's the thing, if we have an imbalance, this is what causes us to become victimized by our heart, by one's heart. This is the shadow mother when we're giving and giving, and we don't have, our boundaries are being crossed. It's like the social worker that burns out because they're constantly doing and giving. Okay. And there's not enough will involved. There's not enough of that, of the ability to have good self-care for ourselves. And so the boundaries are being crossed. Now, the mother the inner mother, like she is fantastic at creating unity, healing wounds, and, conveying wisdom. But she's not so good at having to defining boundaries and saying no. And so if you're finding that's something that you struggle to do, then what you want to do is you want to then become very conscious to invite Father, the inner Father, to awaken your inner Father. Because Father is the one who gives direction. Father's the one who knows how to say no. And this is all part of those two fish. This is another like symbolization of those two fish, the mother and the father within. And what is that inner balance for you with inside of you? Okay, does that make sense? Okay. And so here's a metaphor, and I got this metaphor from one of my teachers, and it's like, imagine that you're a sailboat, and love is what fills the sails. So love is what keeps the sailboat flying across the ocean, and that's mother energy. And father is the rudder. But without the father energy, you're rudderless. You have no direction. And that's an aspect of the shadow of the Pisces energy, of the Pisces walk, is that if we do not have that direction in our life, if we are not putting those boundaries, if we do not have the self-care, then we become burnt out. We become rudderless. We have no direction. We're just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning. And at some point, the will, which is the throat, which is the choice point here, which is also the belly, the power. But if we're living in too much of the heart, and I know that sounds crazy, like how can you live in too much of the heart? I mean, you can live in the shadow of your own heart by being in that place of not having any structure or form. And that's what father energy is. That's that patriarchal energy of structure and form. We must have that combination within us in order to be balanced. And just on a quick side note, because I can't help myself, like that's part of the collective suffering is that we have so much father energy out there, so much structure, so much control. Like, can we bring some love into ourselves? Okay. Now, I want to go into this next piece here. And this is a little bit of astrology, but I think it's going to be, I know it's going to be really helpful. And it is okay. So it's called rulership. So each one of the signs of the zodiac have what's called a rulership. And this rulership is a planet that brings in another layer of their archetypal theme. Now, Pisces has Pluto as a ruler. Pluto is the archetype of the drudger. It drudges things up. So what does that mean? Well, it drudges up. Now I'm going to talk about this in a more collective way for us. It drudges up the shadow of society. Not only does it drudge up the shadow of self, but not to the degree of what society, because Pisces is considered to be an archetype that has to do with like the healing of the planet. Okay. And so it dredges things up. And the reason why I'm bringing this up right now is because I know some of you have been on my call that I did early in the year about Saturn being in Pluto, and how collectively there's some major themes that are happening for us right now, in our, not just our country, but just in the world. And this is one of those things that's happening. And this is why we're seeing all of the darkness, all the shadow, all the unconscious come and ooze out of the surface, is because we have Pisces energy is bringing up. Pluto is dredging up all this stuff, and we've just come into Pluto in Aquarius in January. It'll be there for 20 years, and so this is the dredging of all of this. So I needed to bring that in because that's kind of like a little side note there for those of you who like to follow collective themes, and I do. So I had to share that piece. So when we get to Scorpio, which will be a while, but Scorpio, for example, is another water sign that is ruled by Pluto, and it's about dredging our own shadow up. Pisces is about dredging up the collective shadow. Okay. But going back now to our own individual like medicine walk through Pisces here, I put some questions in the chat, which I'm going to go ahead and repaste again so that those of you who just came in can see. Let's see, let me find my chat here. Oh, there we go. And let me copy them so that everybody can see the questions, because I really like to hear your feedback on what's coming up for you. And because when you share, I also get to learn and, see what kind of feelings you're getting about what the information that I shared with you. So does anybody want to either comment or, take a stab at one of the questions that I asked? And maybe how you're noticing or observing or feeling the whole Pisces journey in your life. And if you do, just go ahead and unmute yourself. And Dree?
Well, I saw that you said, okay, here's the questions, but I couldn't read. Then there was nothing. So is there a way to repost any of the questions?
I just did. And I could do it again. It's in the chat.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they're there right there. Yeah. So the first question I had, I'll read them out loud. How can I explore the spirit behind the mask of me? Here's the other thing. This is a piece that I don't think I said that I wanted to say. And let's see, where is that first thing? Where is it? Consciousness. Here it is. The medicine walk of Pisces teaches you to let go of who you think you are so you can remember who you are. And that's where that very first question, I apologize, I didn't say that. It's how can I explore the spirit behind the mask of me? Okay, because this is part of the unveiling. That's what this Pisces energy brings. It brings an unveiling. And many times it can bring a fog where it's like, I don't know who I am. And one of the things I'll always say when I'm talking to people when they're saying, I don't know who I am, I'm like, well, let's start by finding out who you're not, because that's us peeling away the mask and the conditioning. And that's where we want to start when we're looking, when we're on a path of self-discovery. Who am I not? Martha?
Well, my birthday's the 10th of March, so this is super up for me. And with my reading, I believe you've told me about Pluto is also real big in my chart. So these questions, as I read them, I'm sort of blown away by how deep they are, and so I'm going to stumble through trying to express an answer or comment that I think speaks to each one of them. What I've learned since moving out here to the coast, I've learned that I'm an engagement person. I'm a joiner. I'm a doer. And in the past, I came from martyr energy where it was I needed to go in and save folks. I needed to go in and help save and prop up an organization, or I needed to go and get people talking to each other. I have to say, since moving here, I have really shifted that. And I seek out places to use my time and talent that feed me. And that feels somewhat selfish, but that is part of that martyrdom thing that I've had to really transform. That it's not about selfish or that kind of enabling or anything like that. It's really about the higher expression of myself. And so I feel, based on what you said earlier, I'm feeling like maybe that the two fish dance, the ego and the ego and the soul, that maybe I'm integrated a little more coming from that soul expression, and less from the martyr, the savior, the middle child stuff, and I'm more from a place of inspiration and creativity. And so for me, the shift, my volunteerism, I go to the aquarium. If I have a bad day, or I've had a week where I'm dealing with, I don't know, Social Security or what, IRS or whatever it might be, looking for part-time work, and I just go and I volunteer at the aquarium, and I interact with people who've come there to admire the puffins or the seals or the sea otters or the octopus. It just takes me to a whole greater expression of the world, and so much out of the nitty gritty work of just being human. And it's just the same with my volunteering at the Performing Arts Center. I scan tickets and I usher people, but it's the performance of music that really feeds that soul part of me. So I think what I'm learning is that really I have to feed my soul self in order to show up to be the best expression of myself, in order to be there for anybody else or for any other organization. My challenge is, though, going back into work world, because I feel like I should work part-time, is not to get a job to have a job and have some income to offset, so I don't have spend up all my retirement or whatever, but really to find work that is an expression of all those that higher self, the higher gifts. And that's a lot harder to do. So that's where my wrestling is sometimes my lower ego is saying, just go back to work as a temp. You can do that 20 hours a week. You can manage that. And the other part of me, my soul's ego, my higher ego, is saying, no, wait and be in choice around work that allows a greater expression of my talent and who I've come here to be. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate your imagery around that dance. That really is probably the clearest I've ever understood the fish. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. How perfect for you as a Pisces to be in an aquarium, working in the aquarium. Yeah. Yeah. Tammy.
Yeah, these are amazing questions, by the way. These are really deep and kind of hard to dive in like right away. But the second one where you ask, how can I prioritize my intentions based on intuitive guidance rather than inner logic? And I feel like this has been coming up a lot for me, so I'm just going to speak on it. And I feel like it's such a soft whisper, our intuition and our inner knowing, that we so have to pay attention to ourselves. And like when you hear that little, like, whatever it is, guidance, don't do this, go here, call that, like, just listen. And often I think we have to justify or have a reason because, oh, they might think I'm crazy, or they won't agree, or that's dumb, or whatever it is. But to just know, like, for whatever it is, it's your truth. So whether you're not supposed to go somewhere because, well, you're not supposed to go somewhere, or in even a more interesting thing that happened, there was this really off smell. And I was like, it was almost like an animal had died maybe across, like, because there's no house next to where we are. And I kept saying to my husband, this is driving me crazy. And he was like, oh, your smell, it's so annoying. I smell everything. But I was just something in me. And I was like, Spirit, no, something is not right. And I bleached outside. I thought, did I spill something in the trash? Like, I tried everything. I was like, something is not right. And sure enough, we had a really bad gas leak, and it's gas out of the pipe or whatever, and I could smell it up. And I was like, and I said something to him. And my husband is an architect, a builder, designer. He's like, me of all people should have known that is the smell. I know that smell. And I thought, okay, I didn't stop. My intuition, my gut was saying something is not right. And so even if somebody thinks you're so, they just dismiss you, always trust what your inner self says. So those are my 2 cents.
No, I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. What came up was just the reminder of the inner mother. Like we need to listen to the inner mother and know what the inner mother, what her voice sounds like. Because you're absolutely right, Tammy. I love that. That's how I was taught about the intuition and the voice of the soul. It's like it's a whisper. I mean, yeah, it's a whisper. And and the whisper can get louder and louder, right? When we're not in alignment with our path, with our destiny, that it gets really loud and it'll show up in ways that will want to get our attention. And that's what we don't want, right? We don't want like something to go, yep, there it is. Okay, you didn't hear it, so I'm giving to you now. Yeah.
And sometimes it's like the loudest when like you first hear it. And then I don't know, it just seems to get softer and softer. And sadly, we're just not taught in this society anymore how to really hone into our intuition and how to listen to ourselves and how to like pick up intuitively. And so it's become such it's harder to pick up. But I think the more we pay attention and the more we're intentional about that and just I don't know, just honoring that that's just how I'm feeling and whether other people accept it or not, it's okay. We don't have to justify it. We don't have to have a reason for it. It's just what it is for me now. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else want to chime in here? The question about, actually, I want to comment on a question that I have is about how can I commit to boundaries that guard my sensitive spirit, understanding that there is a difference between a wall and a boundary. And that's a really important distinction to know and make within ourselves so that we know when we're shutting down versus self-caring for ourselves. And if we're shutting down, we're shutting off, and we are, we're closing our heart on some level. And so knowing that difference is imperative for the moving forward, for the vulnerability, for the open heart, for knowing that we're not, sometimes we'll build these walls and they'll be in victim energy, the wall. So just something to note. Anybody else want to share something that is coming up for them? Do you see yourself in what I described have you noticed that on your journey? Like, do you see that Pisces, the healer, that very sensitive energy, the wanting to serve, that's that awakening piece. I remember in my early years, I would think, why would anybody volunteer? This is like, I was way young, like in probably my young teens. Why would you want to volunteer? Why would you want to do something and not get paid? And it was pretty obvious that, my own inner mystic had not yet awakened. Go ahead, Dree.
Oh, yeah. Well, just on that, I had the opportunity, and this is not what I was going to say, but at 15, like I was like the first Earth Day. So it came naturally. Hey, you get out of school and you can go pick up trash on the highway and have fun with your friends. And my daughter is almost 28, and I'm like, come on, but I just gotta keep my mouth shut because everybody evolves at a different pace, and I think she's just starting now to come into it, so that part's fun. But when you were talking about the victim energy and wall and boundary, I thought, well, I don't stonewall anybody. I don't, you know after I assert myself, not talk to somebody, especially my husband or whatever. But I now understand I do put up an emotional wall sometimes. Like he's three fire signs. He's so overbearing. He's so strong willed. And that's just him. And instead of feeling victimized by it, when I just go, this is an opportunity for me to balance myself, and not put it on him. It's just like, hey, I chose you. Obviously, this is what I need to be doing. Then it just softens it a lot. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Dree. Thank you for
Uh-huh.
sharing. Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks for the transparency. I love that when we can like tell about ourselves. Paul.
Okay, I'm highly caffeinated, so if you'll excuse me. Um, yeah, this reminded me of like the very first question, how can I explore the spirit behind the mask of me? It's kind of admit it. Like there is something more behind it. And it made me think back to my 12-step program, admitted we were powerless over others, that our lives had become unmanageable. And just to even say that out loud is like, really? My life? No, my life is good. But there were things in my life that were not. So it was like just get to that first step to say, hey, it's not, things aren't working. I came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I had a hard time with that one because I don't know that I ever was sane. But I want that restoration, and I know there's a way to merge that, restore us to that divine self is what I'll call it, because we all have different definitions about what the ego is, divine self and ego self. So while I was away on a retreat, I came up with this exercise to a spiritual practice. And I think we need to like do something to remind us that there's something deeper and to recognize those shadow elements of ourselves. So I came up with an exercise with acknowledging our judgments, judgments of others and judgments of ourselves. So I borrowed that wristband thing they did a long time ago with the what's it called, complaint-free world. I said, well, we can make it a little deeper because sometimes we feel judged. Like, look at, I'm older. I'm, people look at me, say, oh, you're the artist. I said, no, you're putting me in a box. And then I'll feel like I'm judged, even if it's a good judgment. I'm just one thing, one dimensional. I said, no, there's more to me, isn't there? And then I start doubting because I allow judgments of others to affect how I feel about who I am and my connection to my divine self. So what I would do is I'd take that little wristband and I would remove it and put it on the other hand. And we started doing that in our class. I taught my other, cohort students to do that we were all in the same class and we were all like, oh my goodness, like they're all switching back and forth. And we decided you could just touch it, just touch your wrist and remind yourself like, ooh, I'm judging somebody else. Look at that guy over there. What's he up to? Probably no good. And then, ooh, that's a judgment. Or sometimes it's discernment. There's something, that protective part of the ego, which is it's there to protect us. So there's not a bad ego in my mind. There's that this is here to protect, or it's masking something underneath. So I'm at that point where I'm looking at the shadow elements of me, and I just shared that with my small group, and they really liked it because they just didn't know. And if you don't know, you can't change anything. So just thought I'd share that. Complete.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. That's some good medicine there that you shared. I love it. Yeah, the ego, of how the ego operates. And I think, I remember you sent me one of your writings, and I will paraphrase if you can remember the quote, but it was something to the effect of the ego to push me forward. And do you remember what that line was?
It was kind of get behind me, Satan, and I changed it from back me up. So when that ego shows up, it's like help me move forward. So that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I want to bring up another archetype here. I mentioned this archetype earlier, and it's the mystic. And the Piscean walk is a mystical walk. It's a mystical experience. It's the mystic archetype. And what I want to share with you about the mystic archetype is I'm going to bring in the power of choice. And as we set out on our life path as children, we're living in environments where choices are being made for us because many times those choices are keeping us safe and they're teaching us. And so we feel at times that we don't have choices. And it's important, for children who don't know the world that not all choices are available to them. And then we continue to grow and we begin to make choices in our own life, and we walk the walk of life making these choices and feel very empowered. And then there comes a like an initiation, some form of initiation on the path where there's this awakening, and we realize that there's something out there calling us. We're being called in a direction, and that's where we actually reach another choice point in our life where we can choose to follow that call that's calling us, or choose not to. And for those of us who decide to choose, what we come to realize is that there's also an awakening that happens, and it's the awakening of the inner mystic. And just like when you read about, some of the great ascended masters that have walked the earth before us, that they have walked paths where this was their journey, this was their destiny, and they continued to walk where they were being called. And it's like a releasing of that choice in a very sacred way, where I know for myself, for example, as I began to dive into this work and over the years realizing that I was being called in this direction, that I had a choice. Of course, I had a choice, but there was this bigger energy inside me that said, like, this is what I must do. This is what I must do. And as I continue to walk this path, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, as we continue to walk this path, we realize this is that thing that I must do. And it's not a must from the shadow of the word must. It's from the sacred energy of something that is part of our destiny. And as one of my mentors called it, he called it, this is your responsibility to the ashram. And it's the ashram of life. And this is the awakening of that mystic. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. And there's been times in my life when it's like the message came, Teresa, you're going to get out in front of people and you're going to be doing these talks. And my thought was like, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. This shy little girl who could barely stand to get up in front of a classroom. Oh, that was like terror for me. Doing these retreats, my trip to Shasta 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and it's a message that I got. This is what you're doing. This is time. This is what I must do. And so that's what I call the awakening of the mystic. When we hear that call, we feel that call, and it's like we know it's what we must do. And then we begin to walk the path of the mystic. So I know we're coming up here on time, and I like to honor time. I always say it's about 60 minutes-ish. I don't go over 75, but I want to give any opportunity for any of you that want to say anything, share any other words of wisdom. Please unmute yourself or raise your hand um, and let us hear your voice. Unless you are all complete. Oh, we have Martha.
So I'd spoken a lot already, so I'm always trying to be mindful to not take up more than my fair share, but um, I'm going to step into the what you call the dredger, my role as a Piscean and as the dredger. And I appreciate, I never really heard it said this way, that dredges up the shadow of of society, if I think I heard that right. I'd never really heard that. And I know I've been reflecting on this adversarial world we now live in, where it's so black and white, and it gives me great distress as to, how do you heal that? I just, and what is my role in that? I think I've decided it's to help people tell their stories. And I have a friend who I was just speaking to earlier, who's a veteran educator, and the world in which she was an educator most of her life is not the world she's in now as an educator, where you've got kids who are reacting to, I think, the adversarial way of dealing with things now. And they're making threats online and directly to teachers. And you have to, I mean, it's just the climate in in the schools, it's unsafe both for students and for teachers. And so forget about the teaching and learning. It's about how do you help everyone deal with this adversarial, stressful, combative world we're living in. So I really have empathy for anyone who's on the front lines as an educator, a police person, a fireman, an emergency, healthcare, you name it. They just seems like they're in the line of, it's a combative. And so as the Piscean here, trying to come from a mystical higher place, to ask myself, what is my work to do to help with that? Because I'm not a recluse. I'm not one who would, I could easily be that, because I'm retired, sort of. I could just be, do my aquarium and do the performing arts and do my master gardening and just sort of pretend the rest of that badness isn't out there, that intensity isn't out there. But maybe it's that dredger, that Piscean, mystic energy in me that says, what is mine to do in helping with the healing? I don't know. But maybe it's up because of kind of what you're saying, is where the Pluto and other energy is right now. It's just, everything is just so magnified. So.
Right. And, actually, that's a really good point there, Martha. And what I want to share with everybody is that when I asked earlier, like, who are some of my Pisces here? And so there are different signs in the zodiac that will lend more to the transpersonal experience in life. And so, for example, is Martha just shared in her feelings about, the external situations going on in the world, that sort of thing. And, we've all come here to do our part in whatever, when we awaken, we realize we've come here to do our part in some way. And for example, some people are called to be in service. We're all called to be in service to the greater whole. Okay. But our work is going to look different for each of us. So we have Martha, who just gave us that example. And I'm sure other people in your life or yourself where it's like, yeah, I feel called to do something for a cause. And then there are some of us who are going to work more interpersonally with the helping in the raising the vibration of the collective. There's some that are going to be doing it transpersonally, some people doing it interpersonally, and some people doing it individually. But I think they all tie in together, right? And what we do know is that, this is kind of a very common, um, you know, like I think universal law is that, that we are the change, right? And so when we make the changes within ourselves, then that is how, like, the ripple in the pond sort of an effect. And when my mother died of cancer, and after she passed away, I was asked by many people over the years, like, about doing group stuff for cancer survivors. And it never called to me. It never called to me. And I've I realized about myself that I make my differences one person at a time. And that I didn't have to judge myself because I was not choosing to do this on a greater, like, spectrum of how maybe somebody else's perception of me thought that I would do because of the work that I do. And so I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's important not to feel, like Paul had brought up earlier about the whole judgment thing, and, not to feel wrong in the way we're doing it, because we all do it differently. We've all been called to a different path, and yet we're all walking the same path together. So just wanted to leave you with that piece right there. And let's see. So we're at 12:43, and this has been another great time together with all of you. Some of you coming familiar faces, all of you familiar faces on some level. And I want to invite you to take a look at, considering doing the 50-minute session. For those of you who I've done, it's not an astrological reading, but it's definitely talking about whatever it is that is up in your space right now. If I've done your chart before, I'm happy to, incorporate some of that into the conversation without a doubt, because I kind of, for me, the work that I do, I can't help myself. It just kind of happens. And let's see what else. Yeah, if you get a chance to visit next week at the Radiant Light Center and have that experience there, if you haven't experienced that technology, it's pretty phenomenal. And let's see what else. March 23rd, we're going to be doing Aries, a fire sign, the very first sign of the zodiac, ruled by the ram, the head. Okay, so when you're talking about the mind, the ram, fire. And I think that's about it, everyone. So again, thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. If you're here in Northern California, enjoy the sun, and look forward to seeing you next month, or maybe sooner for some of you, for sure. Yes, thank you all. It was a pleasure.